Hello, awesome folks. I hope you are having just the most majestic day today. Today I'm taking a look at the next top 10 movies and this will be from the 90s of fantasy films from that decade and so forth. This is a sequel to the 80s, which is a sequel to the classic top 10s of various options and so forth. And now I did a science fiction one of classics, 80s and 90s and modern century. So I had 3 separate channels and so forth, but I felt that's because of science fiction, going back and looking at them, there were so many great science fiction films I just wasn't able to put on those top 10 lists. So I felt that I would split that up into the fantasy genres, but the problem is many fantasy decades are pretty light like this one. Right? The 80s is big because of everything was influenced by Conan the Barbarian, an early hit that put fantasy on the map in a major way. This decade, pretty light. It's just basically like the first old era. It's fairy tales and stuff like that. It's not exactly this classic fantasy collection, right, of such. And then the next one is going to hit the next 10 years in the first of the century. Will be all the Lord of the Rings and the Harry Potter influenced films. Heavily great stuff. And then the last 15 years I'm going to combine into one video. It's pretty light stuff too on quality. There's a lot of fantasy films. It's just kind of light in quality, if you will. So here you go. Here's my options of the top fantasy films from the 90s. Now, as a reminder, this list is spoilers free. I'm not going to be giving a deep dive, and when you guys talk about it in the comments below, please also respect each other. I know that's a few decades ago, but still, please respect each other and don't talk about the spoilers. All right, so let's get started. Many of these are just going to be box office bombs, but our cult classics are good stuff, I think. Number 10 is a classic example of it. It's Antonio Banderas's The 13th Warrior. This is a retelling of a Michael Crichton film, or novel rather, which is a retelling of Beowulf. Sort of a not modern days, but modern storytelling methods, if you will, and such. So that's good stuff. I have not read it, just a heads up. But I do respect it. I just recently went back and read Beowulf as translated by J.R.R. Tolkien, so it's fresh in my mind. Anyway, so it's good stuff, and I reviewed it for the channel too if you want to check it out. Anyway, this movie basically is set in North. It's a more realistic, grim, dark, modern telling. It's a little darker at times. It's probably, you might not consider a true fantasy, although it has, all the Beowulf elements into it. So I do. So I do consider it and such. But that's The 13th Warrior, number 10 for you folks. All right, number 9 is Call the Conqueror, another box office bomb. This one's starring Kevin Sorbo, and Call the Conqueror is a Robert E. Howard character, just like Conan the Barbarian, and they were hoping, just like Conan the Barbarian put, which was a Robert E. Howard sword and sorcery, put that genre. They thought that they were hoping that Kevin Sorbo's popularity with Hercules at the time, the legendary journeys on the small screen, as well as that big character, the iconic character, would be a great combination. Unfortunately, it was a bomb. And that was not the series that they were hoping it would be, and so forth. But I like it. I think it's some great stuff there. Now, the character of Cole, I wouldn't say he's really that faithful to the books and so forth. If you recall, he's actually my favorite Robert E. Howard character, hero. I like him, protagonist. I like him better than I like Conan, if you recall. Well, that's Solomon Kane, actually. But yeah, I like Cole a lot. I've read a few of his short stories here and there by Howard. So I wouldn't say that it's 100% faithful, but that's fine. Great stuff for you folks. So there you are. That's number 9 movie, Call the Conqueror. And number 8 is Blade for you folks. Blade is another classic. And now just as a heads up, I do not even know all of the IMDb, Wikipedia pages and so forth do consider a Toy Story franchise fantasy. I don't. Ditto Groundhog Day, which would be on here if those would be on here, right? Toy Story. But this one, I do consider Gothic horror, Blade, at number 8 to be here, because Gothic horror is a little different in that it has more traditional fantasy tropes like vampires and demons, those sorts of things, right? And zombies in a more traditional way, right? Yet horror, true. Yes, that's why I use the term gothic horror. But I would consider Blade overall to be a fantasy film, just for you folks, in case you care. There'll be another fantasy film, horror too, gothic horror, that'll hit a little bit later, a few slots later. But this one's pretty strong. Love it lots. Blade put this comic books and vampire films, and was a huge hit out of nowhere on the map in a major way for you folks. And so I do consider this a fantasy. Although it's not exactly, it wouldn't lead with its fantasy roots, if you will. It's more of a horror first, but it's good stuff. Love it lots. It's one of my favorite, and so it is R, just as a heads up. So it's, you go into, as with all the adults, it's got lots of blood scenes and so forth. So that's number 8 for you folks, Blade. Number 7 is The City of Lost Children, which I own on DVD and I've watched one time. This is not an American film. This is more of an independent film. It stars Ron Perlman. Love him lots in this film. It's non-American. I think it's in French and Brazilian or something like that. But it's great stuff. Love it lots. Watched it once in subtitles. It's definitely something I probably want to watch a second time, or maybe even a third time, like Donnie Darko or things that hit later on. I don't want to spoil it for that reason. But it's great stuff. The City of Lost Children for you folks. Love it lots. So next is The Nightmare Before Christmas. Number 6 for you folks. Again, this is the highest hitting gothic horror. Although I think the fantasy elements here are a little stronger than in Blade. With Jack Skellington and the characters of the towns and the different lands that they're in, like Christmas Land and Halloween Town, and those sorts of things. Love it lots. I think that this is definitely a strong stuff. It's hugely influential. People still watch it to this day. You can see a lot of video games or books or comics or movies that have taken this animation style and have really pushed it because it was a big hit. And I've even, one of my favorite video games, for example, Don't Starve, is heavily influenced visually from this. So it's good stuff. Like it lots. That's number 6, The Nightmare Before Christmas, the highest hitting gothic horror. The rest are all here are fantasy-ish. Number 5 is Jumanji. This is the original Jumanji, not the remakes with the video games. This is a board game set up starring Robin Williams, who is on a setup with a section, and then they're going to be transported after playing the board game to Africa, and will have to survive in the jungles and so forth. So because of that, I think it's a fantasy element, although it's definitely a modern day fantasy, and the fantasy is pretty light, if you will, but I like it lots. There's number 5, Jumanji, for you folks, and now number 4 is a retelling of the Beauty and the Beast fairy tale by Disney, and that's Beauty and the Beast, obviously, which I just told you so. So basically, this has its fantasy on the sort of beast itself, animated, stuff from magic. There's enough magic there from the animated, silverwares and curses, and then the beast proper. Right? There's a lot of fantasy stuff there, here and there. It's a lighter fantasy sprinkling here and there, but it's there for you folks. And that's number 4, huge classic on the screens. And there's also a remake of it too, and visually that did a lot of well in real life. I think that made it a lot of money too. Top 3. Number 3 is The Mummy for you folks. This is the one starring Brendan Fraser. That's more of from the late 90s. That's more of a horror action, if you will, a comedy. Love it lots. Heavily influential, made a lot of money. It was a big surprise hit that people were not expecting. But Brendan Fraser on the map in a major way. And definitely great stuff that happened in the Mummy, because it is a more fantasy retelling of the Mummy from the previous version, which is more of a horror one from the Universal horrors. It's definitely a stronger, I think, fantasy aspects to it, and it's a surprise that people were not expecting. Love it lots. Hugely influential. Love the series too. And love the things that are influenced on it too, like Jungle Cruise, starring The Rock too. All right, so there you are. That's number 3, The Mummy. Number 2, Hook, starring Robin Williams. Hook is basically a retelling of Robin Hood as modern adult folks and such. And so it's a sort of a sequel, if you will, to Robin Hood, which is obviously a beloved children's classic stories and such. And so this is a retelling sequel of it. So it's in the fantasy world, although it doesn't start in the fantasy world. And so whatever we consider Hook fantasy aspects of it too. So there you are. That is Hook at number 2. And at number 1 is my favorite Disney animated movie of all time. That's Aladdin. Aladdin is a retelling of stories. It's a new IP, if you will, but it's a retelling of stories from the 1001 Arabian Nights set in the Middle East, or in the deserts. It might not be. It could be North Africa. I don't want to specifically say it's the Middle East, just because it's deserts and Arabic stuff. I'm a little biased. Great stuff. It's heavily influential. It's beautiful stuff. The animation on it's great stuff. The songs are great. Robin Williams is great in here too. It's just like he's in Hook. Love him lots. But then I also think that he really sort of elevates it and put it on the map in a major way. He's a hugely stand power. Great stuff. So that's number 1, Aladdin. So here are my top 10 once again. Hitting number 10 is The 13th Warrior, starring Antonio Banderas. Number 9, Cult of the Conqueror, starring Kevin Sorbo. Number 3, Blade, which is starring, somebody who just revised his role as, no spoilers. And so forth. Number 7 is The City of Lost Children. Number 6 is The Nightmare Before Christmas. Number 5 is Jumanji. Number 4 is Beauty and the Beast. Number 3 is The Mummy. Number 2 is Hook. And number 1 is Aladdin for you folks. And so there you are. Those are the top 10 classics and such. So from the 90s for fantasy. Have you seen them? If so, what did you think about them? Did you agree or disagree with my thoughts? Just let me know in the comments below, whatever your thoughts are of you folks. And then and then what's your list, right? What's more important, right? This is just my list. I haven't polled fantasy fans. I haven't, I haven't. I'm not an official, I'm not a critic. I trained in movie business. I don't do films. I'm just a fan, right? And so forth. And so this is just a fan's one fan's idea. So what's yours? Your values are just your ideas are just as valid as mine. So I'd love to know what your top 10 are from this decade. And so forth. There are some similar pickings, but do you consider the Toy Story franchise? And if you consider Groundhog Day, I'm sure those will probably hit, but where, right? And what will leave your list? What did I miss, right? And there you are. I'll go ahead and leave you to it. If you like this video, why not hit the subscribe button, the like button, the bell icon if you're feeling around frisky, and then let your friends know too, like fantasy fans or movie fans or older films, right? And those sorts of things. As a reminder, this channel's name is The Worst Thing About New Books. This is a quote by a French philosopher, Jacques Joubert, who said that the worst thing about them was that they kept us from reading the old ones, right? This is definitely a little word. In this case, fantasy stuff from a couple of decades ago is heavily influential and stuff from video games, so forth. Now, this is movies, right? Not books, but you can get the idea. That's where unpacking these things is a lot of fun. All right, so there you are. And so finally, I want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and investing it and watching my video, because we all have so many things, right, that are happening in our lives, and we're pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spent this time with me, that's incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it much. So have a great day, and thanks again.